Charlie laughed helplessly after hearing Warnia's words. It seems as though you do not want to be bound to the rules of the Song family. Warnia nodded before she said, I really do not want to be bound by the rules of the Song family, but I have no other way out of this. Why? Charlie asked in a serious manner. I think your grandfather might change his mind after this near-death experience because of his critical illness. Furthermore, you're the reason his life was saved and he's able to live healthily for a few more years. If he's really grateful towards you, you can take advantage of this opportunity to ask him for the freedom to love and decide on the man you'd like to be married to. I believe he'll definitely give you the freedom to choose your own husband. Warnia smiled bitterly, and she shook her head before she said, That's impossible. Even if Grandpa really loves me and feels bad for me, he wouldn't dare agree to that. Why? Charlie asked with a puzzled expression on his face. Isn't your grandfather the head of the Song family? He's the one in control of the entire Song family, and anything that he decides on would be the final decision. What would he ever be afraid of? At this time, Warnia replied in a serious manner, The Song family has developed over the years before finally becoming what it is today. All the members of the Song family are bound by the rules set for the family. As long as everyone obeys the rules, the Song family will always be united and indestructible. If anyone is given the freedom to break any of the rules, then the Song family will definitely crumble and suffer a huge loss as no one would abide by the rules anymore. After that, Warnia continued speaking. The Song family has had to endure so much hardship before growing to become the powerful and wealthy family it is today. The reason why we could do it is because every one of us had the interest of the family at heart, and none of the members of the Song family has ever broken the rule. Charlie sighed before he said, Warnia, I've always thought that you were a very strong and powerful woman. I really did not expect you to be bound at the mercy of others, too. That's right, Warnia replied as she sighed. There's no way out of this as long as I am a member of the Song family. As she spoke about it, Warnia shook her head before she raised her wine glass and said, Mr. Wade, let's not talk about all these unhappy things anymore. Come on, drink up, I'll toast you again. Charlie smiled before he raised his wine glass and said, All right then, this glass of red wine is to celebrate freedom. Warnia was slightly startled at this time. For freedom? She did not have any freedom at all. Even though she was very depressed, Warnia forced a smile before she nodded and said, Yes, let's drink to our freedom. Warnia was already starting to get drunk after drinking this glass of wine. She stared at Charlie before she sighed and said, Do you know how many times I wished that I was born into an ordinary family instead? I feel that my life would not be so difficult if that was the case. I wouldn't have to face so many rules and constraints in my life, and I think I'd be so much happier. Even though I hold such a high position and have endless wealth because of my family, I don't have the chance to feel any real happiness. Charlie smiled slightly and said, Do you also know that there are also many ordinary people who are actually more envious of people who are as rich as you are? This is because they wouldn't need to worry about money or how they are going to make ends meet. Haven't you heard people saying that they'd rather cry in a BMW than laugh on a bicycle? You might think that you'd feel very happy and content to be born into an ordinary family, but this kind of ordinary life is precisely what many people are trying to get rid of. At the end of the day, isn't making more money the reason why everyone is hustling and working hard? At this time, Warnia looked at Charlie with a serious expression on her face before she said, Mr. Wade, you don't seem to care about making money at all. You weren't even interested in the $20 million that they were offering you just now. In fact, you could have already made a lot of money if you would just sell the pills for $10 million each. However, you chose to give the pills away for free instead. Why does it seem like money means nothing to you at all? Charlie smiled indifferently as he thought to himself. He did not care about money because he was not short of money at all. However, Warnia did not know about the times he needed money desperately in the past. In the past, Charlie had actually asked Lady Wilson to lend him some money during her birthday banquet, so that he would be able to pay for some medical expenses. Initially, Charlie thought that Lady Wilson would definitely lend him the money since she believed in Buddhism, and it was a Buddhism teaching that stated there would definitely be good karma for every good deed done in this lifetime. Who would have known that Lady Wilson was just a believer in Buddhism on the surface, but she was actually an extremely greedy and shameless person within. At that time, he would have been willing to kneel down in front of anyone if that person offered to give him $1 million. No one can resist the attraction of money when they are in need. Those who are able to really treat money as dirt are those people who have more than enough money to spend. What was $10 or $20 million to Charlie now? He had tens of billions of dollars in his bank account, and Emgren Group made tens of billions of dollars in profits every year. He did not know what else he could spend his money on anymore. Therefore, what was the point of him accepting the $20 million from them now? He would rather not take the money, but instead allow them to pay homage to him and to treat him as their benefactor, just so they would show him more respect in the future. That was what he really wanted. But how could he tell Warnia what he was thinking? Right now, Warnia feels that he was a saint who could actually treat money like dirt. If that was the case, then he would simply allow her to continue thinking that way then. At this time, Warnia continued drinking her red wine as she muttered to herself, "Actually, I can tolerate everything else, but I really don't want to be manipulated and controlled by the Song family when it comes to matters involving my own marriage. I don't want to be a pawn that is controlled and used to advance the Song family business. I don't want to give my youth and happiness away. I don't want to follow in my mother's footsteps and repeat all her mistakes." Charlie asked out of curiosity, "Was your mother's marriage also arranged?" "Yes." Warnia nodded before she said, "After marrying my father, my mother was never happy in her life. She was so depressed for so many years until she finally passed away at a very young age." Charlie vaguely remembered Orville telling him that Warnia's mother had given her the diamond necklace before she passed away more than 10 years ago. Since Warnia should be around 25 or 26 years old, Charlie estimated that her mother had probably died when she was around 10 years old. In that case, her mother must have been really young when she passed away. Warnia took another sip of red wine and she played with the wine glass in her hand before she said apologetically, "Mr. Wade, I'm sorry that you had to listen to me talk so much nonsense." Charlie hurriedly replied at this time, "Warnia, please don't say that. I'm glad that you can confide in me because this shows that you trust me." Warnia nodded before she wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. After that, she said, "Mr. Wade, I really want to thank you for everything that you have done for me today. You didn't only save my grandfather's life, but you also listened to me complaining and spewing so much nonsense about my life. Thank you for being such a good friend." Charlie smiled and said, "You don't have to be so polite with me if you regard me as your own friend. If friends are too polite, then it seems as though the friendship isn't real." "Yes," Warnia replied as she nodded. "It is already getting late, Mr. Wade. I will send you home." Charlie waved his hand immediately. "You don't need to send me off. I don't think that you should be driving in this condition, so you should also find a driver to take you home." Warnia nodded and said, "Don't worry about me. The female manager here can drive me home later. I need to send you home first." Warnia returned to the Song family mansion after sending Charlie home that night. Lord Song did not listen to Charlie's instructions to rest in bed. Instead, he was sitting in the living room at this time as he spoke to Warnia's cousin and uncle, who were reporting the entire family situation to Lord Song at this time. As soon as he saw Warnia arriving back at the Song family mansion, Lord Song waved his hand before he said, "Warnia, I've been waiting for you to come home." "Grandpa," Warnia replied in a respectful manner before she asked, "Why are you waiting for me?" At this time, Lord Song replied, "You were the one who invited Mr. Wade here today, weren't you? Can you give me a detailed account of how you met him?" "Okay, Grandpa," Warnia hurriedly explained herself. "Mr. Wade and I met by chance at Vintage Deluxe. At that time, Mr. Wade was with his father-in-law." "Father-in-law?" Lord Song asked as he frowned immediately. "Mr. Wade is already married?" "Yes," Warnia nodded immediately. "What a pity, that's a real pity," Lord Song replied as he shook his head and sighed. "This is really such a pity." At this time, Reuben hurriedly replied, "Grandpa, don't worry. I've already heard some news about Mr. Wade, and it seems as though he is the son-in-law of a really incompetent and small family." A small family? Lord Song felt even more puzzled at this time. Which small family has the ability to get such a good son-in-law? Reuben smiled before he replied, "The Wilson family. Grandpa, I bet you've never even heard of this name before." "Yes, I've never heard of this family." Lord Song frowned before he said, "Since the Wilson family is just a small family, then I guess that it wouldn't be that difficult. There is still hope for us." After that, Lord Song looked at Warnia before he said, "Warnia, go on." Warnia continued speaking. "At that time in Vintage Deluxe, Mr. Wade's father-in-law accidentally overturned one of our antique vases. After that, Mr. Wade repaired the antique vase with some incredible craftsmanship, and he not only repaired the antique vase but also doubled the value of the antique piece. After that, I started paying more attention to Mr. Wade." Immediately after, Warnia started explaining the entire process of how she got to know Charlie to her grandfather. When Warnia explained that Charlie was the one who called for the thunder and lightning that struck the metaphysics master, Jack Yaleman, to death at the banquet hosted by the White family, everyone sitting in the living room was stunned. "Jack Yaleman? Jack Yaleman?" Lord Song murmured. "I heard of this name a long time ago. I heard that he has a very mysterious and incomparable ability. Is he dead now?" "Yes," Warnia replied with a face full of admiration for Charlie. "Mr. Yaleman was very arrogant and disrespectful towards Mr. Wade and everyone else at the banquet at the White family mansion that day. In order to teach him a lesson, Mr. Wade called for thunder and lightning, and within a few seconds a bolt of lightning came out of thin air and struck Mr. Yaleman dead in an instant." "Oh my God! What kind of supernatural powers does he have?" Lord Song asked in shock. The other members of the Song family were also very frightened at this time. He called for lightning to kill the famous metaphysics master? This was too unbelievable. After that, Warnia continued her story. "After that, another feng shui master from Hong Kong tried to deceive me out of my money. However, Mr. Wade saw right through him, and he was the one who helped me to reverse my fortune by destroying the dragon encapsulation formation that I was trapped in my bedroom." Warnia continued talking about how amazing Charlie was, and after listening to Warnia's story, Lord Song was also impressed with Charlie. He also admired and looked up to Charlie because he was the one who saved his life today. After sitting in silence for a short while, Lord Song sighed before he said, "The Wilson family is really lucky to get such an amazing son-in-law. Mr. Wade is not an ordinary man. He's really a god." At this time, Reuben could not help but say, "Grandpa, don't you think that it's an exaggeration to call him a god?" "You think I'm exaggerating?" Lord Song replied in a cold manner. "Do you really think that thunder and lightning will fall from the sky if you call for it? He could do it. So don't you think that he has some supernatural powers? People with supernatural powers like him deserve to be called a god." After that, Lord Song looked at Warnia with a serious expression on his face before he said, "Warnia, Grandpa has a task for you." Warnia hurriedly replied, "Grandpa, please tell me what you want me to do." Lord Song suddenly said, "I want you to make Mr. Wade the son-in-law of the Song family." "What?" Everyone present in the living room, including Warnia, could only stare at Lord Song in shock. At this time, Warnia felt a burst of excitement in her heart. However, she was still very cautious, and she said, "Grandpa, Mr. Wade is already married." "So what?" the old man replied in a firm manner. "I don't care if he's already married or if he has many wives or mistresses. Even if he has a lot of children, we'll have to win him over. I want to have a son-in-law like him. If he is the son-in-law of the Song family, then the Song family business will definitely increase exponentially and will also be able to rise up the ranks among the other powerful and prestigious families. The Song family will finally have the opportunity to become one of the most powerful families in the country." Warnia hesitated for a moment, but she had a very strong expectation in her heart. After that, she looked at Lord Song before she replied, "Okay, Grandpa, I understand." Lord Song laughed before he said, "Good, good, good. If you get Mr. Wade to become the son-in-law of the Song family, I will make you the next head of the Song family, Warnia." Everyone was shocked when they heard Lord Song's words. How could he give the position of the head of the Song family to a woman? However, Lord Song had just made her a promise, and he had never broken a single promise in his life. For the first time in their lives, all the members of the Song family had their own thoughts about this matter. When Charlie finally returned home, it was already 10 o'clock at night. As soon as he got into the house, he was surprised to see his whole family sitting in the living room with a solemn expression on their faces. When Elaine saw Charlie, she started questioning him immediately. "Charlie, Where did you go? Do you know what time it is right now? How could you go out for so long? Do you still regard this as your house?" Charlie was about to reply to Elaine's questions, but at this time, Claire suddenly frowned and said, "Mom!" Elaine could not continue questioning Charlie anymore. After Charlie placed some vegetables on the table, he asked in a casual manner, "What are you guys talking about? Why do all of you look so solemn?" Jacob asked, "Did you hear about the big news in Oris Hill today?" "What news?" "Millennium Enterprise has already gone bankrupt because all the other companies have decided to terminate their partnership with the company. Moreover, all the creditors of the company also showed up at their front door today to demand for their money. The company went bankrupt overnight and they owe several $billion in foreign debt. The boss of the company, Peter Murray, was so desperate that he jumped off a building today and he's now in a vegetative state." Charlie acted as though he was completely unaware of this matter, and he asked in surprise, "Oh? Really? That's so unfortunate." Jacob shook his head and sighed before he said, "Peter Murray used to be the most dominant figure in the real estate industry in Oris Hill. He used to be so rich and powerful. I wonder who he offended and why he'd actually end up like this." "People like him deserve to go bankrupt," Claire replied with a cold expression on her face, without an ounce of sympathy for a pervert like him who tried to take advantage of her. At this time, Elaine sighed as she said, "So, do you know how risky it is to start your own business, Claire? If you start losing money, you might also be forced to take your own life." After that, Elaine looked at Claire and said, "I think you shouldn't be starting your own business. The risk is too high. You should just return to work for Wilson Group. Your grandmother has already promised me that she'll make you the director of Wilson Group, and you'll have a fixed annual salary then. Wouldn't that be much better than starting your own business?" Claire was very puzzled when she heard her mother persuading her to return to work for Wilson Group again. Therefore, she could only ask her mother, "Mom, what kind of ecstasy did Grandma feed you? Why are you always forcing me to go back to work for Wilson Group?" Elaine was very anxious at this time, and she quickly replied, "If you work for Wilson Group, you'll be getting a fixed annual salary. Isn't that better than starting your own business? What if you lose all of your money because you chose to start your own business? What should your father and I do then?" Claire replied in a firm manner, "Mom, stop trying to force me. I'm never going to return to work for Wilson Group. Even if I have to beg for food on the streets, I would never return to work for Wilson Group in this lifetime. I might have to beg for food, but I'll never lose my own pride or dignity." Elaine glared at Claire before she said, "Are you doing all just to preserve your own pride or dignity?" After Elaine was done speaking, she started crying as she complained in an aggrieved tone. "Wilson Group is about to go bankrupt. If it really does shut down, then your father and I will not be receiving our pensions. You should know very well that we'll have to rely on this pension for our retirement fund when we grow older. Moreover, even if your grandmother doesn't think highly of your father, he still has a stake in Wilson Group. If you refuse to return to the company, we'll also lose our dividends then. What are we going to do in the future?" Claire blurted out immediately, "Mom, the Wilson family deserves to go bankrupt because they don't know how to manage their own company. Even if they go bankrupt today, I think they deserve it because they've brought it upon themselves." Elaine started to lose her temper at this time. "Claire, what are you talking about? We've already been part of the Wilson family for a long time, and you've already worked for Wilson Group for many years. Don't you feel anything at all if Wilson Group goes bankrupt just like this? Claire, can you consider going back to work for Wilson Group for my sake?" Claire replied immediately, "Mom, I've always done everything that you want me to do. You asked me to give you most of my salary, and I obeyed. You asked to be put in charge of our family's finances, and I gave in to you. Dad and I have never had any objections to you managing all our money. I've already given in to you all the time, and I think you should show me a little respect. I really don't wish to go back and work for Wilson Group, and I want to start my own business and do something for myself. Can't you just support me for the first time in your life?" Elaine knew that she was wrong, but after listening to Claire's words, she sat down on the sofa and kept crying as she said, "Why is my life so difficult? I've worked so hard to raise my daughter, and I thought that I could depend on her to marry a good and capable husband. Who can ever understand why your grandfather insisted that you marry someone like Charlie? Now my daughter doesn't even care about me or bother to listen to my advice anymore. Tell me, what's the point of staying alive if my family doesn't even care about me anymore?" Claire felt extremely angry and frustrated when she saw her mother complaining about how miserable her life was. Therefore, she started to lose her temper and she said, "Mom, can you stop taking out your anger on Charlie all the time? Charlie is very promising now and he's taking good care of our family. Once the renovations are complete, you'll be able to move into the biggest villa at Thompson First because of Charlie. Can't you just be grateful and stop complaining already?" Elaine continued crying as she said, "What do you want me to be grateful for? So what if we move into the villa? We have to live in fear because who knows when the White family will change their minds and decide to kick us out of the villa." Claire sighed before she said, "Mom, I can't tolerate this anymore if you are going to continue crying and complaining all the time. Please stop it or I'll move out of this house with Charlie." Elaine started getting anxious at this time and she stood up and said, "Do you really want to live apart from us?" Claire nodded before she replied, "Yes. Charlie and I have already been married for so many years. It's time for us to move out." "No!" Elaine blurted out immediately. "Absolutely not!" Claire looked at her mother with a serious expression on her face before she said, "Mom, if you're going to continue to force me to go back and work for Wilson Group, I'll move out of this house with Charlie immediately. If you stop talking about Wilson Group, then I won't move out. You can make the decision on your own." Elaine looked at Claire and she could tell that she was not kidding. At this time, she suddenly realized that she was already testing Claire's limits by taking things too far. If she continued crying and creating trouble for her daughter, she knew that Claire would definitely move out of the house with Charlie without any hesitation. At that time, she would have no choice but to fend for herself. If that was the case, she would not even have the opportunity to live in the villa that Zeke had given to Charlie after the renovation was completed. Elaine gave in immediately when she thought about this. At this time, she could only sigh before she said, "Okay, I'll choose to be supportive of you then. I won't mention Wilson Group anymore, okay?" Claire was finally satisfied and she nodded before she said, "All right then. We won't move out then." Charlie could not stop himself from showing a thumbs-up gesture at Claire when he witnessed her showdown with her mother. His wife was really incredible. Even though it was not apparent, Claire was always very effective at handling all the critical moments. Jacob did not say anything so far, but when he saw his daughter, who rarely lost her temper, finally getting angry and frustrated, he came forward and said, "Look, why should you be fighting? Isn't it good for the family to be harmonious and happy?" Elaine glared at Jacob with a sharp expression on her face as she said, "You didn't even say a word before this and you suddenly have so much to say now? Even though Charlie is useless, he even got us a villa, and we now have a new place to live in. What about you? What have you done for the family? All you know how to do is to play with some antiques every now and then. You're the most useless person in this family." "Hey!" Jacob got frustrated when Elaine started to push the blame to him. After that, Jacob quickly said, "Elaine, don't you dare despise or look down on me. Have you forgotten how amazing I was when I made a few $100,000 by selling some medicine?" At this time, Elaine looked at Jacob with a disdainful expression on her face as she said, "If you get arrested for fraud, don't expect me to save you or to take out any money to bail you out." "You are really a bitch," Jacob yelled out angrily. "Can you stop looking down on others? I'm talented at investing in antiques, okay?" After that, Jacob rushed into his bedroom before he brought out a pen holder and said with an arrogant expression on his face, "Look, I'll show you what I found today. This item is worth at least a few $100,000. Elaine replied in a disdainful manner, "When are you ever going to wake up and face reality? Do you really think it's so easy to deceive others? Do you think that everyone is as foolish as you are?" Jacob stomped his feet angrily at this time before he said, "Don't look down on others if you have no understanding of antiques at all. This pen holder is from the Qing dynasty and I only spent $5,000 to buy it. I've already sent a picture of this pen holder to Zachary and he's willing to pay $300,000 for it." Charlie glanced at the pen holder in Jacob's hand and he was really surprised. If the pen holder was really from the Qing dynasty, then it might really be worth a few $100,000. However, Charlie could already tell with just one glance that the pen holder in Jacob's hand was obviously made with modern craftsmanship. It would probably be worth no more than $100. The seller was obviously treating Jacob as a fool when he sold him the pen holder for $5,000. Charlie could understand how Jacob would be so easily fooled. However, at this time, Charlie could not help wondering why Irvin, who was an antiques dealer, would actually pay Jacob $300,000 for this penholder. Irvin was the type of person who would invest in a cheap bargain and then try to rip his customers off instead. Since this penholder was obviously fake, why would he be willing to spend $300,000 on it instead of simply offering Jacob $100 for it? When Jacob said this, everyone looked at him with an incredulous expression on their faces. Elaine asked Jacob in surprise, "Are you telling me that someone wants to spend $300,000 for this tattered thing? I don't think that you'll even be able to sell it for $50. Jacob replied in a triumphant manner, "Why would I lie to you? If you don't believe me, why don't you take a look at my message history?" As soon as he said this, Jacob took out his cell phone before he opened his text message and clicked on a voice note sent to him by someone called Irvin. Irvin's voice sounded over the phone at this time. "Uncle Jacob, you've got a very good penholder in your hands. I do think the penholder is really from the Qing dynasty. Why don't you sell the penholder to me instead? I'll give you $300,000 for it." Elaine was very surprised, and she quickly said, "Oh my God, you were telling us the truth. Jacob, you're incredible. You bought the penholder for $5,000, but you actually sold it for $300,000. If you do this a few more times, we'll be rich." Jacob hummed before he asked, "So, are you convinced now? Are you finally convinced?" "Yes, I'm absolutely convinced," Elaine replied immediately. After all, Elaine had always been a fan of money. She would always support anyone who had money. As soon as she heard that Jacob had sold the penholder for $300,000, she quickly forgot everything that she had said, and she simply smiled and said, "My husband is really amazing. I can't believe that you actually have such incredible skills in antique trading. It seems as though Charlie is still the most useless one in this family." The expression on Charlie's face changed immediately. What had this to do with him now? Had Jacob already forgotten that he was the one who made the herbal pills that he successfully sold the last time round? However, at this time, Charlie felt that he really had to look for an opportunity to ask Irvin who he was selling the penholder to. What Irvin was doing was equivalent to giving his father-in-law money for free. Jacob handed the penholder over to Charlie with a look of excitement over his face as he said, "Charlie, please bring this with you to Antique Street tomorrow and help me pass this to Irvin. He said that he'll prepare $300,000 in cash for you, and you can bring the money home for me then." Charlie nodded immediately. "Okay, Dad." Jacob was very satisfied, and he continued speaking. "Charlie, you should accompany me to more antique trades and events in the future. Perhaps if you keep following me, you will be able to develop an eye for antiques just like me. After that, we'll be able to make a fortune together. What do you think about that?" Charlie could only verbally agree, but all that he was really thinking in his mind was all the trouble that Jacob had caused him in the past. How could Jacob actually have the audacity to ask him to learn from him? Has he forgotten all about the antique vase that he broke in Vintage Deluxe? If Charlie had not been there with him at that time, and if Charlie did not help him repair the antique vase, Jacob would have already been locked up in prison. How would he ever be able to afford to pay for the antique vase? However, after thinking about it, Charlie felt that his father-in-law was just like a young boy. He only wanted to do anything that he liked and that made him feel good about himself. Early the next morning, Jacob called Charlie eagerly and asked, "Charlie, can you go and look for Irvin already? I want you to pass the penholder over to him as soon as possible so you can collect my money for me." Charlie nodded before he asked, "Dad, you are not coming with me?" Jacob replied, "I'm going to attend an event hosted by the Calligraphy and Painting Association today. They've invited me to attend the meeting and a conference. After joining the conference, I'm certain that I'll be invited to many internal auctions for paintings and calligraphy." Charlie could only reply helplessly, "Okay then, I'll go to Antique Street to look for Irvin then." Since Jacob had already instructed him to do so, Charlie would head to Antique Street to look for Irvin. Claire was also taking a break from work today, and since she was feeling bored, she told Charlie, "I'll go with you." Charlie nodded and said, "All right then, let's drive your car there." Claire replied, "I'm tired. I don't feel like driving today. You can drive instead." "Okay, I'll drive." The couple drove to Antique Street together. Since it was the weekend, there were many people at Antique Street. Irvin had already opened his stall for a long time on Antique Street. Therefore, he has his own permanent booth on the street. Charlie could find him as soon as he entered the Antique Street. At this time, Irvin was holding a fake jade pendant in his hand, as he was bragging to a foreign couple. I am telling you that this jade pendant was worn by the emperor of the Ming dynasty before he passed it to his grandson and the generation after that. After many twists and turns, the jade pendant finally fell in my hands. Is it really that valuable? The middle-aged man asked in surprise. How much does this jade pendant cost? Irvin grinned before he replied, Since we're fated to meet today, I'll sell this jade pendant to you for just $180,000. After leaving Antique Street, you can actually sell this jade pendant to an auction house for at least $1,800,000. The woman smirked before she replied, If you can sell this jade pendant for 10 times the amount out of Antique Street, then why didn't you do that yourself? Do you really think we are fools? Come on, husband, let's get out of here. After that, the woman dragged her husband away from Irvin's stall. Irvin started cursing angrily at this time. Damn it! When did all these foreign tourists become so smart? When Charlie saw what happened, he smiled before he approached Irvin. So, Irvin, are you still trying to cheat your customers? Oh! Irvin exclaimed when he saw Charlie. He quickly bowed before he greeted Charlie immediately. Mr. Wade, why are you here today? After greeting Charlie, Irvin noticed Claire, who was standing next to him. Oh, this must be your wife, Mr. Wade. She's such a beautiful woman. Charlie simply replied, Stop flattering me. The reason why I am here today is because I heard that you want to pay my father-in-law $300,000 for a pen holder? Yes, 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 Irvin nodded as he replied excitedly. Your father-in-law is really amazing to have found such a rare piece of treasure. That pen holder is worth at least $300,000 to $400,000. He's really amazing. At this time, Charlie pulled Irvin aside before he whispered, Irvin, stop fooling me. Everyone on Antique Street can see that this broken pen holder is a fake. The only person who doesn't know that is none other than my father-in-law. Now, tell me why you are willing to pay $300,000 for this fake pen holder. Come on, tell me the reason now. Irvin quickly replied, Mr. Wade, I wanted to honor you because you're a really incredible man. Not too long ago, your old man came to me with 2 magical pills, and after reselling it, I managed to earn at least $2 million. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. It would be inappropriate for me to keep all the money to myself when you were the one who made the pills, right? As soon as he spoke, Irvin continued smiling before he said, That is why I thought of another way to share the profits with you. I know that money does not mean anything to you at all. Therefore, I thought that I'd be able to share the profits with you through your father-in-law instead. Charlie sneered before he said, Yes, Irvin. You took the magical pills from my father-in-law, and you paid him a few $100,000 for it when you were making millions out of it. Do you really think you'd be able to atone for your sins by simply offering me $300,000 for a pen holder? Irvin started trembling in shock as he replied, Mr. Wade, please forgive me. If you aren't satisfied, I'll give you all that money. I don't want anything else. I only want your friendship. Irvin knew very well that he cannot afford to provoke Charlie. After all, Charlie was a very powerful man who had connections with many powerful and wealthy people in Oris Hill. Everyone regarded him as the greatest metaphysics master because he had actually destroyed a couple of metaphysics masters from Hong Kong. So, Irvin only wanted to please Charlie. At this time, Charlie simply glanced at Irvin before he said, Forget it. My father-in-law doesn't know the value of the pill, and he felt that he had already taken advantage of you when you gave him $500,000 for the pills. So, let's just leave it as it is. After that, Charlie looked at Irvin before he said, However, I hope that you won't hesitate to help me if I require your help in the future. Do you understand what I am saying? Irvin quickly smiled before he replied, Don't worry, Mr. Wade. From now on, I'll do whatever you want me to for you. Charlie nodded in satisfaction when he saw how obedient Irvin was. In fact, Irvin was a very clever man, and he would definitely be useful to Charlie in the future since he is indeed very capable and full of ideas. After that, Charlie told him, Irvin, I'll definitely treat you well if I'm satisfied with your behavior. Irvin hurriedly clasped his fists together before he said, Don't worry, Mr. Wade. I'll definitely make sure you're satisfied. Charlie could not help but smile at Irvin's flattery. Do you know that I really feel like hitting you because of how shameless you look right now? Irvin laughed before he said, Mr. Wade, I know how ugly my face is, but you should also know that money is never ugly. After that, Irvin took out a black box from under the seat before he handed it over to Charlie. Mr. Wade, this is the $300,000 in cash that I'm supposed to give your father-in-law. Please check if the amount is correct. Charlie waved his hand before he said, It's okay, I'm leaving now. Irvin suddenly asked, Mr. Wade, aren't you going to walk around Antique Street? No, I won't be walking around the street today, Charlie replied immediately. After all, 999 out of 10,000 items displayed on Antique Street are fake. What's the point of shopping here? Irvin nodded before he said, All right then, please have a safe journey. I'm about to close my stall too. Charlie then asked out of curiosity, Where are you going? Why are you closing up so early? After that, Irvin replied, I'm going to the small commodity market to buy some goods. It seems as though no one is really interested in fake jade anymore. Therefore, I'm going to the commodity market to buy some copper coins instead. I can get the fake copper coins in the commodity market for $1 each, and I can sell it for $1,000 to $2,000 on Antique Street. Claire was shocked when she heard Irvin's words, and she exclaimed immediately, You're buying them for $1 apiece, and you're about to sell them for $1,000 to $2,000 each? Isn't that exploitation? Irvin scratched his head before he replied, Well, that is how things work on Antique Street. If I sell the copper coin for $1 or $2, the other stall owners on Antique Street will kill me. At this time, Charlie could only stare at Irvin as he said in a helpless manner, Can't you do something that doesn't involve cheating or deceiving an innocent person? Irvin looked at Charlie with a bitter expression on his face. Mr. Wade, if I don't deceive people on Antique Street for a living, I'll definitely starve to death. At this time, Charlie replied helplessly, All right then, good luck to you. Since the small commodity market was on the way back to their house, Charlie said to Irvin, Why don't you come with me? I'll give you a ride to the commodity market. Irvin really did not expect someone like Charlie to offer him a ride. Therefore, he was extremely excited, and he quickly packed up as he thanked Charlie. Mr. Wade, thank you for being so generous and kind. Thank you, thank you. Charlie waved his hand before he said, Okay, stop your nonsense and just get into the car already. As soon as they left Antique Street, the sky turned gloomy, and after a short while there was a thunderstorm as heavy rain fell from the sky. It had been raining recently, and the urban area would always be flooded because of the heavy downpour. The rain was very heavy at this time, and the traffic radio station also reminded all the car owners to avoid several main roads that had already been closed due to floods from serious water accumulation. Therefore, Charlie could only choose to use a detour from the outskirts of the city. Irvin was very anxious and excited as he sat in the back seat of the car. He secretly took a picture of Charlie's side profile while he was driving before posting the picture on his social media profile with the caption, I would never have imagined that I'd ever be fortunate enough to ride in Mr. Wade's car. A lot of people began leaving comments below his post. Most of them were asking Irvin not to forget them now that he was actually in touch with someone like Charlie. Irvin felt very proud of himself at this time. Charlie was not driving fast, and when he passed a secluded street, he suddenly saw a car that was parked on the side of the road. The car was an old black Mercedes-Benz, and it was parked crookedly on the side of the road. A woman walked out of the car in a hurry at this time. When Charlie saw that both the front tires of the Mercedes-Benz were already flat, he assumed that this was the reason the woman had stopped the car. Charlie did not want to be nosy, and he planned to continue driving. However, at this time, Claire looked out the window and she saw the woman who had just walked out of the Mercedes-Benz. She was stunned for a moment before she exclaimed, Charlie, stop the car! I think it's Elsa's car! Charlie stopped the car immediately. Claire pushed the car open before she hurried out of the car with an umbrella in hand. Charlie rushed after Claire as soon as he saw her getting out of the car. What happened, Elsa? Claire asked as soon as she rushed over to Elsa. Claire, what are you doing here? Elsa asked as soon as she saw Claire. She was trembling because she was drenched from the heavy rain. She looked extremely surprised and embarrassed, as though she did not want her best friend to see her in such an awkward manner. Claire held the umbrella over Elsa's head and she quickly replied, I happened to pass by this road with Charlie when I saw you by the side of the road. What happened to you? Elsa quickly replied with an annoyed expression on her face. Let's not talk about it anymore. My company sent me out on an errand today and they gave me a car to do so. That's the reason why I drove out to meet the customer in this car today. However, even before I could meet up with the customer, I realized that I had punctured my car tires. Moreover, it wasn't only one tire that was punctured, but two. I'm so annoyed right now. Charlie felt a little puzzled at this time. It was normal to experience a flat tire when driving. However, under any normal circumstances, a flat tire would only occur when sharp objects, such as a nail or iron wires, accidentally pierce the tire. Therefore, generally, only one of the tires would be punctured. It seemed a little suspicious that both sides of the tires were punctured at the same time. Therefore, at this time, Charlie simply said to Elsa, The rain is getting heavier and heavier. It isn't safe for you to stay out here alone. I think it's best for you to leave your car here and hitch a ride back to the city with us first. We'll call for help to fix your car once the rain stops. Elsa nodded before she sighed and said, I guess that's my best option now. As Charlie was leading them back to the car, Charlie suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the sky in a very swift manner. At this time, Charlie also saw a silver light bursting through the sky in the heavy rain. Moreover, this silver light was coming straight at Elsa. Charlie did not even think about it, and he instantly stretched out his hand before pulling Elsa into his arms. At the same time, he suddenly heard a loud crashing sound, and a sharp dagger was pierced directly into the front hood of the black Mercedes-Benz. The dagger was as thin as a willow leaf, and it was extremely sharp and shiny. Even though the hood of the car was made of hard metal, this extremely thin and sharp knife cut through it like it was bean curd. There was total silence as everyone's eyes were fixed on the flying dagger. Fortunately, Charlie managed to pull Elsa away on time. Otherwise, the flying dagger would have cut straight into Elsa's forehead. Since Charlie pulled Elsa away, the dagger brushed her cheeks a little, and the sharp blade cut off a little of her hair. It was really thrilling. Elsa came from a very powerful and wealthy family, and even though she had experienced many storms in her life, she could not stop herself from screaming when she realized what was happening. Immediately afterwards, two more daggers flew towards them, and Charlie frowned as he held Elsa in his arms as he avoided the flying daggers in a swift manner. The flying blades were really fast, and Charlie would not have been able to avoid the daggers if he did not practice the exercises in the Nine Heavens Profound book. He would not have been able to save Elsa or protect himself. Elsa was also extremely shocked at this time. Unexpectedly, someone in Oris Hill was after her life. Moreover, what was even more unexpected was the fact that Charlie was the one who saved her twice. At this time, Charlie held Elsa tightly in his arms as he raised his head in the heavy rain. He could see an off-road vehicle parked not too far away. At this time, a person inside the vehicle was staring at him with a blank expression on his face, as though he did not expect Charlie to save Elsa from the flying daggers that were aimed directly at her. "Who do you think you are? How dare you ruin my brother's plan?" At this time, two men stepped out of the off-road vehicle. The two men were full of murderous intent as they walked towards Charlie.